Guyana voted on March 18, 2016 at the historic local government election LGE. It was the country's first LGE in 23 years. This would come after promises were made by the coalition parties to reinstate the long-delayed election. The objective? To allow the management of towns and communities free from central government control. This week on Guyana 411, we take a look at the local government system 1 year after the LGE of March 18, 2016. I am Delon Sanko, and this is Guyana 411. The March 18, 2016 election presented a foothold for the government to realize a promise to reinforce grassroots democracy. And for the first time, this could happen because the local councils were operating in a revised local government structure. A structure created because the administration had made amendments to the legislation that now allows local government councils to unfettered responsibilities to discharge their lawful authorities.
The elections by themselves did not create the revised local government structure. The structure was already in place. In fact, the structure was provided for in the Constitution, which was created in the 1980s and later revised. In particular, the provisions relating to local democracy and the role of local government were actually strengthened with revisions between the period 2001 to 2003. Despite these revisions, the new provisions were not upheld. Upon taking office in May 2015, the government moved to honor these provisions to allow the local government system to play the role that is provided for under the Constitution. Minister of Communities Ronald Balkan tells us more.
You may ask, what evidence is there to support this? And the first evidence I will offer, because of its significance, has to do with the Local Government Amendment Act. Now, our viewers may recall that this was the act that was passed in the National Assembly during the 10th Parliament, the one that President Ramatar refused to assent to. This act was brought back. It was one of the first pieces of legislation that was brought before the 11th Parliament, and it was passed in the National Assembly and immediately assented to by President Granger.
In essence, what the amendments to the Local Government Act did was remove a lot of the powers that lay in the hands of the subject minister. This then allowed the local councils to have greater autonomy. For instance, whereas formerly the subject minister had the authority to dissolve a council, that provision was taken away. Another key provision which came into being with the amendments had to do with the power of a local council to finance its own budget. Minister Balkan, who holds responsibility for local government, explains.
Formally under the Act, an NDC required ministerial approval of its budget. That provision was removed, and our NDCs no longer require central government approval of their annual budgets. Of course, all they are required is that whatever is their projected expenditure, that their revenues must be consistent with that.
The ministerial oversight and the necessity for the approval of a budget were removed from central government and returned to the local councils. Both were key components of the revised system that the government was creating, that of placing more authority of local governance in the hands of the local officials.
The councils were now operating in a revised local government system that also created for the creation of several other new local government areas. This allowed the further replenishing of central government power to the people. It also brought on board more local officials to support and foster development in more communities across Guyana.
The creation of the new towns was part of the government's strategic policy. This move was grounded in the idea that these towns will lead to economically stable communities and regions. Minister Balkan explains.
These new towns are expected to be capital towns where they're expected to be the administrative center to provide key governmental services and to be the center of those respective regions. It is again an important manifestation of the strategic policy of this administration to provide for and allow for stronger regions and the role of our regions to foster national development via regional empowerment.
The government established Bartica, Lethem and Madja as towns. This was to enable the communities to become hubs of economic growth and public services. Bartica, Mabaruma and Lethem are the regional capitals for Region 7, Mazaruni-Cayuni, Region 1, Barima-Waini, and Region 9, Upper Takatu, Upper Essequibo, respectively. Back in April 2016, at the swearing-in ceremony of the local councils, Mayor of Bartica, Gifford Marshall, spoke of how the municipality would move ahead with plans to become a capital town.
It definitely means we have some changes to do within this community. So we're looking at infrastructure in terms of roads, we're looking at our municipal airport, we're looking at that sewer of a waste disposal site that we have. We must get that situation fixed. And then the sensitization, residents must understand that we have to change our mindset when it comes to littering and so forth. So those are a package that we'll have to move forward with. And I can keep saying that the one that is a burden to me is our young people, our teenagers especially, who don't have jobs. We definitely have to find jobs for our young people.
It is the government's intention to ensure that all of the 10 administrative regions have capital towns. Thus, the government also announced its plan to create 3 more towns. Currently, the government is working to put systems in place to have Madja function as the capital town of Region 8, Putaro-Siparuni. Madja was scheduled to become a town before the local government elections of March 18, 2016. However, challenges delayed this process. Minister Balkan tells us about those challenges.
The challenges that was faced with the realization of Madja becoming a township had to do with the demarcation of the constituency boundaries, because under the legislation, the number of electors that are required for the election of a constituency representative or councillor, the number of residents in the geographic space of Madja poses some challenge to create the constituency, those constituencies having sufficient residents and sufficient eligible electors to be able to meet the requirements of the legislation. So this has been the challenge that is being addressed. But the work program is that those challenges will be surmounted in 2017.
Madja is not the only new local government area expected to be gazetted before the end of 2017. 4 new neighborhood democratic councils, NDCs, Kururu and Yarukabra in Region 4, Barakara in Region 6 and Aranuputa in Region 9 are to be gazetted.
The holding of the March 18, 2016 elections was the beginning of a long-awaited process of acquainting local officials with executing and controlling their community affairs. All of the new councillors required intense familiarization with the provision of the municipal and local government law. They also had to become acquainted with their responsibilities to the citizens in their communities.
It all came back to the neglected local government system which existed for 22 years. This neglect of the system had led to a great degree of dysfunctionality in the local councils. The challenge which was faced following the local government elections and the renewal of the lives of the councils was therefore to address the question of capacity building at an institutional level. Kakwani Region 10 NDC Councillor Charles Thom explains how his council fared in the early days following the March 18, 2016 election, after being non-functional for some 10 years.
Our council, seeing that it was not functioning for the past about 10 years, 10 years, it was something new. We had to get everything back on its feet. The whole system, the old records, we had to put back things new. So, most of us were learning about how to run an NDC. And we tried to work as a team.
Since March 18, 2016, the administration has been working with the local councils to provide training and capacity building for them to manage and develop their own areas. In this process, the government has been very fortunate to benefit from a Canadian government-funded program, Caribbean Local Economic Development Project, or CAREC. CAREC was introduced into the local government system in Guyana in August 2012. National coordinator of the project in Guyana, Roger Rogers, however, highlights that much of the success only came in the recent months.
I think a lot of the success was more recent, and I'll be very guarded here, but suffice to say that the project concept and the project priorities over the last 18 months, primarily because of the national focus on a greater role or viewing local government of local authorities as a critical part in the development framework, has presented expanded opportunities for the program, so that the alignment of our national priorities with the project priorities enabled over the last 18 to 20 months for us to do a number of things in terms of institutional strength.
During the past 2 years, CAREC facilitated training sessions for the local councils covering intergovernmental relations, governance, the legal framework of local government, good practices of local government, and planning. The Linden municipality is among one of the councils which benefited from institutional training under CAREC. Mayor of Linden, Carwin Holland, says that he and his council are thankful for the support.
I want to thank the government for seeing the importance of empowering the local government organs. And I want to also thank government for seeing partnership as an important tool in the rebuilding process. And partnering with CAREC, I believe, is a very important factor in this process. We've benefited tremendously from the CAREC program and the Ministry of Communities partnership.
Rogers says that the success which the project has left with the councils will continue to pay off for years to come.
What I can confidently report is that from the beginning, when we started that program to now, the impact, the change among elected officials in terms of their outlook and how they view their role has changed significantly in a positive way. So going forward, I can say a couple of things. One, the ministry has taken steps internally to replicate and sustain a number of initiatives that were birthed from the methodology of the CAREC project. And two, the institutional strengthening at the various levels of local government will, in a positive way, impact the various jurisdictions.
Other milestones achieved under CAREC over the last 2 years include the completion of 5 municipal development plans in the township of Linden, Corriverton, Rose Hall, and Georgetown. 4 of those municipalities, with the exception of Georgetown, have started implementing those plans. In addition, 11 of the NDCs in regions 2, 3, 4, and 6 are able to benefit meaningfully from the creation of local area economic profiles. These profiles are aimed at fostering the ease of doing business in these NDCs. The project has also donated a number of equipment to several NDCs.
In addition to addressing the issues of institutional capacity building with councils, expanding their revenue base also became a top priority. Why? Because many of the council's financial budget weren't sufficient to effectively manage and deliver services.
For communities to experience development, both local councils and residents must work together. Local councils must provide a number of services to the residents. This provision, however, has a cost attached and becomes recoverable in the form of rates and taxes on the resident's land or other property. Properties are valued based on rates set by councils after the completion of the valuation process. These rates are expected to be paid annually. The job of delivering services, however, becomes harder when residents do not pay their taxes and when the revenue collections are low. The issue is further compounded by an evaluation system dating back to the 1980s. Mayor of New Amsterdam, Kurt Winter, explains.
We're suffering from a devalue system and defaulters. So we're pleading with the citizens to come in and, pay the taxes on time because it's meager. That's one part. The other aspect is that we're trying to garner revenue in terms of sanitation. We're looking now. This is through the discussion phase of them paying a small fee at the end of the month. We're now looking at that. We have to set a structure, take it to the public, see how they would accept it, and then we would have to institute that.
In the years since the local government elections, several of the local councils have sought to explore revenue-generating initiatives to boost their finances. Many of these initiatives, however, have not gotten off the ground. In some cases, this was due to lack of support from the residents. In others, a result of insufficient consultations before the initiatives were implemented. The outcome is that even after 1 year, the local councils are still greatly dependent on central government subvention to deliver services to their residents. This is particularly true of the Rose Hall municipality. Mayor Vijay Kumar Ramu explains that the municipality continues to be heavily reliant on the government's subventions as residents find ways to avoid paying their rates and taxes.
We are compounded with low revenue income, and in the last couple of weeks we have seen that there's a big dip in the revenue collection in the market, which is going to be a setback for the municipality. That used to be our base, so that will help us to cushion some of the work and pay the staff. But I've seen for the last 3 weeks it's a dip tremendously. And when I check, I noticed it because there have been a lot of sellers who have abandoned the market.
The government has been working to address the deficiency of the council's finances. Measures to this effect have included increasing the amount of the subventions to the councils. Minister Balkan highlights that the benefit of the recently approved Inter-American Development Bank IDB loan was to better support the local councils to enhance and modernize their property assessment capability and system.
Once this begins to happen, it will then allow our local councils to be able to increase their financing and to allow them to become less dependent on central government and to move more in the direction that the legislation provides for, which is that local government organs ought to be able to generate the greater portion of their revenues from within their own jurisdictions. So this is a critical area in part of the rebuilding process. On the one hand, it's the institutional strengthening and capacity building, and then there's this aspect of the financing arm of our councils.
As the local councils work to boost their finances, for now, budgeting seems to be the most important economic tool for allocating their scarce resources.
Even as government works to support a process of having local officials play a greater role in managing their own affairs, it must also get those who are not on board to embrace these positive changes.
To realize the revised local government system, the government has signalled to the NDCs, municipalities and regional democratic councils, RDCs, the need to promote several deliverables in their respective areas. Among these are for opportunities to be provided for residents to have input on issues relating to regional and community development. In this process, the government is not without its supporters. Regional Vice Chairman Region 10, Elroy Adolph, and Mayor of Linden, Carwin Holland, for example, are two who are supportive of the government's effort to return power to the people.
For me, it is very good bringing back local government after a number of years and trying to empower the community, to help the community to work together, not depending on the government, but how they could empower themselves and also help others who are there to work. And I also say that it's very good. The government have done. I commend the AP and UAFC government for taking that initiative for over 23 years of bringing back government to the people.
It is a challenging thing to put in place to know that over 20 odd years the local government system was suppressed and denied, and to come within 2 years and to bring in all these changes and to enact all these laws and to put things in place. It's, we cannot expect everything to be done overnight. Rome wasn't built in a day. But what I appreciate is that government has been making significant strides in bringing things in order.
Unfortunately, there are signs of resistance in varying degrees to the changes which the government is seeking to bring to the system, which Holland also notes.
I believe that in many municipalities you find personality taking the front step. And also the lure of the opposition. I've been in trying to undermine and trying to get persons to do certain things. I believe it has been overwhelming. But persons have to be strong. Persons have to stay the course, because you're just in government. Do you want to go back to where you were? For me, the answer is no. I believe persons need to stay the course and not to be fooled, and to just try to work together.
In the years since the local government election, many of the opposition-controlled councils in particular have boycotted several of the empowerment initiatives rolled out by the government. This occurrence is particularly baffling to Minister Bulkan, who cannot understand the resistance to programs which seek to benefit the rebuilding of the councils and their communities.
I find it extremely puzzling that our regions do not see the benefit of a program such as this, which is being championed by the central government, that allows for stronger regions, that allows for more empowerment by our regions, that allows for our regions to have a greater say in the management of their own regions and to be less dependent on the central government.
The administration, however, recognizes that the process of rebuilding and restoring relevance to the local government system will not happen overnight. However, the administration remains optimistic that in time all those who now reject the changes in the system will come to understand and see the efficiency that will be amassed. Minister Bulkan is optimistic that when the others who are now resistant see the progress made, they will follow.
the process doesn't have to wait for all, I believe, for it to go forward in its entirety. Those who are ahead will lead the process and will serve as the example and the inspiration for those who are resistant or unwilling. But these dynamics are yet to play out. What is not subject to negotiation is the determination of the administration to move in this direction.
The rebuilding of the local government system will take more than 1 year. The government, however, remains committed to giving the people the power to design the systems and determine the services which affect their everyday lives. To achieve this, the government is prepared to allow for the process necessary to arrive at this end. These include holding the local government elections as and when they are due. In keeping with this commitment, the next local government election will be held before the end of December 2018.
We have come to the end of another edition of Guyana 411. This and other programs can be found on GINA website. GINA has an active Facebook page, and we encourage you to visit and like us so you can be informed as the news unfolds. You can also follow our YouTube channel. Join us next week for another edition of Guyana 411. I am Delon Sanko. Have a safe week.